Charlotte sat by the window, staring at the rain as it painted long streaks down the glass. The room was quiet except for the soft tick of the old wall clock and the occasional thunder rumbling far away. She wore a faded sweater that Benjamin once said made her look like autumn, soft, quiet, and full of meaning. She smiled at the memory, but her eyes were wet. This was the third night she had stayed awake thinking about him. Not because she missed his touch, but because she missed what it had meant. Sex had never been just a physical act between them. It was a language, once spoken in silence, with trembling fingers and held breaths. But over time, the language changed. Words got lost, embraces grew cold, and one day, the embrace never came back. Charlotte met Benjamin when she was 22, in the spring of her last year at university. He was standing at the bookstore counter, flipping through a book of poems, his hair messy like he'd just woken from a dream. She had never believed in love at first sight, but something about his eyes made her heart pause. He looked up, their eyes met, and something soft passed between them, an unspoken recognition. They talked for 3 hours at a cafe nearby. He told her about his fear of dying without ever being truly known. She told him she often felt invisible even when surrounded by people. That night, he walked her home, and before she went inside, he touched her face and said, "I see you, Charlotte." Those words stayed with her for years. Their love grew slowly, like flowers in early spring. Gentle, careful, warm. There was laughter and poems scribbled on napkins. There were nights when they lay in bed and listened to each other breathe. They didn't need sex at first. They needed trust. They needed to know the world wouldn't break them for being soft. It happened on a cold night in November. They had been together for 8 months. It wasn't planned. There was no dramatic build-up. They were sitting on the floor, talking about childhood fears and dreams. Then, silence. Then a kiss. Then more. It was gentle and shy and real. Afterwards, Charlotte cried, not because it hurt, but because it felt like she had given him a part of her soul. Benjamin didn't ask why. He just held her. "Are you okay?" he whispered. She nodded. "I just feel open. Like a window." He kissed her forehead. "Then let me be the wind that doesn't slam it shut." They never talked about sex as something to perform. It was a form of being, a wordless agreement. "I am here. I am yours. You are safe." But life isn't kind to soft hearts. As time went on, the world crept in, jobs, responsibilities, money, pressure. They moved into a small apartment on the east side of town. At first, it was a nest. They made dinner together, danced in the kitchen, made love on the couch, under the stars coming through the window. But slowly, Benjamin began to change. He stopped writing poems. He stopped laughing as often. He would come home tired, distracted. He would lie beside her, but she felt the distance growing. And then, one night, he turned away from her touch. That was the beginning of the end. Charlotte tried to talk to him. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Just tired," he said. "Do you still want me?" she whispered. He kissed her forehead, just like that first night. But this time, it felt like a goodbye. "I love you," he said. But it didn't feel whole. Charlotte had once read that the frequency of sex in a relationship could tell you how alive the love still was. But for her, it wasn't about how often. It was about how present he was when they were together. And now, even when it happened, it felt like a ghost of what it used to be. She started blaming herself. Maybe she wasn't pretty anymore. Maybe she had lost something. Maybe the soft parts of her were too much. Maybe men always leave when the shine fades. Benjamin never cheated, but he grew quiet, and silence is sometimes louder than betrayal. They stopped holding each other afterwards. He would turn away. She would lie there, looking at the ceiling, feeling like a stranger in her own body. It hurt, not just her heart, but her soul. Sex had become a test she kept failing. She would try harder, lingerie, candles, words. But love isn't something you can earn. It's either there or it's not. One night, Charlotte sat at the edge of the bed and looked at Benjamin as he slept. He looked peaceful, gentle, the same face she had fallen in love with. And she realized something that made her chest ache. Sometimes, love isn't enough to keep someone close. Sometimes, people break even when nothing obvious goes wrong. She could stay and fight, but she would lose herself in the process. And that's not love, that's sacrifice without meaning. So, the next morning, she packed a small bag. She didn't leave a letter. She didn't slam the door. She just left quietly. She walked through the early morning streets, where everything still smelled like dew and dreams. And for the first time in a long time, she cried not out of pain, but out of release. Months passed. Seasons changed. Winter melted into spring. Then summer bloomed. Charlotte learned to live again. She took long walks, she painted, she read books under trees. And slowly, she began to feel her body return to her. She touched her own skin and didn't feel sadness. She looked in the mirror and saw someone whole. She didn't date, not because she was scared, but because healing deserved silence. Sometimes, she would lie in bed and remember the way Benjamin had once held her, the way sex had once felt like a prayer. And she would weep, not because she missed him, but because she missed being felt. But she also remembered the ache, the nights of silence, the kisses that felt like apologies. And she knew she had done the right thing. Years later, she saw Benjamin again. It was at a bookstore, the same one where it had all started. He looked older, softer, sadder. They talked, small words, weather, work, time, then, a long silence. Finally, Benjamin said, "I never stopped loving you." Charlotte smiled gently. "I believe you. Then why did you leave?" "Because love shouldn't hurt," she said quietly. "And we started confusing touch with healing. We made sex a way to pretend everything was fine. But I was breaking, Benjamin. And you didn't notice." He looked down. "I noticed. I just didn't know how to fix it." She touched his hand. "Sometimes the bravest thing isn't staying. It's letting go." He nodded, his eyes full of the same sadness she had carried for years. They didn't kiss. They didn't touch beyond that simple moment. But something passed between them, an understanding, an embrace of the past without needing to relive it. Charlotte walked out of the bookstore and into the golden evening. The air smelled of hope and old stories. She had once believed that sex was the strongest thread between two people. But now she knew, it's the embrace that matters. The holding after, the silence shared, the willingness to be seen, again and again. She had loved deeply, she had lost painfully, and still, she had lived. That was the real power of love. Not the sex, not the passion, but the quiet knowing that even after pain, your heart can still open like a window. And maybe, just maybe, the wind won't slam it shut.